version of the inspired event, inspiration event, part of the growing generosity program that we've been running here at Turramurra Uniting Church. A program helping us to understand and hear where our mission planning is up to and where we believe that God is leading to us as we try and build a strong and vibrant and growing and life-giving and helpful church, not just now, but into the 2030s. If you don't know me, my name's Phil. I'm one of the two ministers here at Turramurra Uniting Church, and for about the next 20 minutes or half an hour, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the things that have been emerging out of the mission planning process. But I want to ask you a question first. In all the places that you've lived, the places that you've called home, have any been very special to you, well-loved homes? Or maybe it's a room in that particular home that is well-loved, full of good memories, full of things that have brought you joy. I've been asking that question at the inspiration events, and different people have been sharing not only how many houses they've lived in, but which ones have been well-loved. The reason I was using that well-loved phrase is because I think that we, as a church here at Turramurra Uniting Church, we have a church that is well-loved, well-loved. Right back at the beginning of the mission planning process, one of the very first gatherings that we had for that, Dave Cornford took us out to outside the chapel here at the church, and we looked at some of the foundation stones that were there. And we asked the question, wonder what the dreams were when the people started, Trinity Methodist Church 120 years ago, but also, I guess, St Margaret's Presbyterian Church 100 years ago. What were the dreams that they had for this place? What did they hope that God might do through their congregation? Where was God leading them back then? Because in a sense, that's what we have been trying to do in the mission planning process. And as I said, if you look over those 100, 120 years, there's been lots of things that people hold special in their hearts, reasons why this church is well loved. I was doing some reflecting and I was thinking back to the Care Centre, a program that ran here at the church for nearly 45 years. Started off as a way of helping people who had special needs, young people who had special needs, and then grew into being a respite care for lots of different people, especially towards the end, more senior people. And the impact that had in the way that people view that special weekly program as being so well loved. But it's not just the Care Centre, or I think about all the Friday night ministries or all the people who've been involved in providing worship here over that time, or the different big events that have been held or run by Turramurra Uniting Church over the years. It makes this place well loved. But it's just not what we do, it's who we are, the community that's gathered here that makes this place well loved as well. I have heard stories of the times when St Margaret's and Trinity came together to make the decision to join as one church. And from the people who were journeyed through that time, you may have been one, I've heard that it hasn't been the easiest of processes to go through. It wasn't the easiest process to go through. But people gave of themselves and gave sacrificially, and because they could see that God was doing something bigger and wanted to be a part of that. It's been quite extraordinary how that process has led to this place that I'm standing in now. If you're either side of me are two beautiful banners, one of the vine and one of the sheep, that both reflect the specialness of the community that we have here, that we are all connected. You know, we're all like a leaf on the vine, or we're all like a sheep under the Good Shepherd. So it is part of the community here, the people who have been gathering here over the last 100 years, that has made this place special. But I want to say, just because something is well loved, or has been successful doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at how it's going, or that it doesn't need to change. That maybe the context that we now find ourselves in has changed. And maybe we need to ask, is God leading us to view things differently at the moment? And I guess that's what part of the mission planning process that we've been on is about. Now, this mission planning process has been going for 12 months? And one of the images that we used that's been helpful is the image of a well-loved house. And you might have noticed my well-loved house next to me here. This is my children's Little People's house. If you don't know what Little People's are, it's a toy brand put out by Fisher-Price, a bit like Barbie or Polly Pocket. But there's lots of different things. And here is the Little People's doll's house that my kids played with heaps when they were younger. It is very well loved. I'm not quite sure if the kids loved it more or Marion, who loves Little People as well, loved it more. But it's a good analogy of what we've been talking about. You might have had a well-loved house that you might have gone, maybe it's time to do some renovations. And if you're renovating a well-loved house, you just don't knock it over and start again. No, you walk through the place and have a look at each room and ask the question, is this still meeting our needs? So you might walk into, say, the bathroom and go, you know what? Everything's working. It's looking great. We don't have to touch anything here. Now, that doesn't mean that the bathroom's not important. The bathroom's incredibly important. It just means that we don't have to do any renovations or updating on the bathroom. But we might walk into other rooms and go, we might need to do some thinking here. And the example I used in the mission planning process was that of the backyard, that you might walk out in the backyard and go, you know, the swing set and the kiddie pool was fantastic when the kids were younger and they gathered their friends together. But now when they gather their friends together and they're all in their mid-20s, maybe the kiddie pool and the swing set's not the right thing. Maybe instead we need, a large table and a fire pit. It's not as if the purpose has changed. We're still gathering people in the backyard, but the context has changed. People have got older, and so we might have to do things differently to adapt to the new context. Or we might go, there's rooms that were great, like the 1970s Swedish sauna was great, but nobody uses it anymore. And maybe it's time to let that go and use that space for something else, something new that we need right now. And maybe there are things in the house that are broken that need immediate looking at, like the broken stair rail. We need to deal with that right now. And that was sort of our approach when we came to mission planning and looking at the church. That certainly there are some things that are going great, and whilst they're really important and we want to keep doing those really well, we don't need to spend a lot of time reimagining those areas. They can be left as is. But there might be some areas where the context has changed and we do need to do some rethinking or reimagining of how to do these things in the context we now find ourselves. Or maybe there's things that we need to let go so that new things can emerge. Or maybe there are some issues that are important that we address right now. And so that was our approach. And in this recording, I just want to share some of the things that came out of that the last 12 months of lots of conversations. We've had big conversations and small conversations. You might have been part of them, like the mission planning days that we had. We've talked to some other churches to hear what they've been doing. We've spent a month in prayer, praying and discerning where God was leading us. And I just wanted to share some of the things that have emerged. I do want to say, though, that we're still on this journey. This is not the end. We're still on this journey of working out how to be a strong, vibrant, life-giving, fruitful and growing church, not just now, but as I said, well into the 2030s. To explain a little bit of the process, we've had a group of people who have been specifically looking at this, called the Mission Council. And they've been helping guide this process. And there's been a subset of that that has tried to put some words down on paper for you. And so I'm going to recommend that you read this document here. You can find the links to this document on our website, or I'll even put them in the comment section of this video. But this is a paper that we put out, which has got our purpose, our values, our passions, and our goals. This is a great document. Every time I read this, I get excited by it. And I encourage you to read it. I really, in these inspiration sessions, wanted to just sit here and read this document, but people thought that that may not have been engaging enough. But it doesn't mean it's not good. It is very good, and I encourage you, grab this document, have a read through it. I'll refer to elements of it, but it's best for you to read through this document and to see what has emerged so far out of the mission planning process. I've also produced this document, or this flyer, which gives some information that I'm sharing right now. And I encourage you to read that as well. But this has got our purpose, our values, our passions, and our goals. This is more the narrative that I'm sharing today. Both those are available on our website or in the comments below. So when we came to working out how we were going to present this, the Mission Council wanted me to be very clear up front. And so I'm going to use my little people's house as a prop here. And I don't know if you can see it well, but down the bottom there, there's all this green at the bottom there. And that is a good place to start, because we wanted to say that in everything that we're doing in the mission planning process and into the future, that our foundation has to be in Jesus. That green has to be in Jesus. After all, we're a church. We're not just any community group or charity, we are a church. And we wanted to be clear that in everything that we do, Jesus is at the centre of it. If you look at the values in that document I referred to it before, the very first value starts there, that we are a Christ-centred community. Jesus is at the heart of everything that we do. So Jesus not only is the foundation that we build of, Jesus is at the centre, at the heart of everything that we do. Even if you look at the last value that we have there, it talks about spirit-led adaptability. That sense of, even as we're moving forward in the future, it's not just the foundation, and once Jesus is there, we don't have to think about it. No, everything that we're doing, the direction that's being set is being set God through Jesus and the Spirit. This is what we're about. And whilst I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff, the Mission Council wanted to make sure that right up front that we wanted to be clear. Jesus is at the heart of everything that we do. Without Jesus, we can do nothing. But if I go back to my house now, I really love the fact that it's got a kitchen and a living room in my house here, because I think the kitchen and the living room are great analogies of what's most important in the church. Because the kitchen and the living room is where everything happens in a house. It's where people gather. It's where hospitality occurs. It's where people share stories and grow with each other. And in a sense, the kitchen and the living room highlight two of the key pillars that has come out of the mission planning process that I want to start with. In the mission planning process, we sort of went on this idea of repetition. If an idea was kept on coming up by different people in different places over and over and over again, the same idea, then maybe that was God speaking to us, and we should look more closely at that. And there was 3 words that kept on coming up over and over again. And I want to share the first 2 of those now, which was discipleship and community. Or we've added transformational discipleship and relational community. And as I said, I think that picked up in this analogy of the house, that if we want to be a church that is vibrant, life-giving, growing and fruitful throughout the 2030s, a key focus needs to be on discipleship, helping people know and grow in Jesus, and community, helping people feel connected, loved, cared for, supported as we journey through life. 2 incredibly important pillars that a lot of our mission has been built upon. If you go back to this other document that we have here, the values and our passions, and read the sections there on community and on discipleship, they are fantastic. But they also highlight it's very hard to separate the two, because in a sense, discipleship works best when it's done in community. And community informs and shapes our discipleship. And so whilst they're two separate things, there is definitely a connection there. And at Turramurra Church, we do discipleship in community in two main ways: in large gatherings and in small gatherings. If you think about the large gatherings, the main way that we do discipleship and community in large gatherings is weekly worship. When we gather as a large group to draw close to God, to praise God, to receive teaching and grow in our faith and our understanding. But it's also the place where we meet with each other, and we support each other, and we pray with each other, and we have morning tea or dinner with each other. and it's those opportunities to be together in community that's also important. And we wanted to take a closer look at how we gather in worship, in discipleship and community, in these large gatherings, and maybe ask the question, is the things that we're doing still helpful to people who are gathering? You know, is our faith growing? Is our community deepening during these times? I'm sure for many people, and many of the answers for that would be yes. And we want to keep the stuff that's helpful, but we also want to be asking the questions, is there some reimagining that we can be doing to make this even more helpful, to help us, grow more in our faith or to deepen our community? In the early 2000s, the minister here, Reverend Steve Everest, did something similar back then and spent a bit of time with the community here, looking at worship and small groups, and did some reshaping back at that time. I don't know if you remember that time, but that reshaping certainly brought a whole lot of life and energy and vibrancy to the church that we're still reaping the benefits from 20 years later. We believe that God is leading us to do a similar process now. And not only do you find the ways that we can look at our large gatherings and our small gatherings to be more fruitful and vibrant and life-giving, not only now, but in the next 15 to 20 years, right through the 2030s. We've got this unique opportunity to be looking at how we can shape worship and gatherings to be helpful, not only for us, but for the next generation to come. And so we've started that process already, but we'll keep going. And we're going to be looking particularly at the 9 a.m. worship service coming up soon. Evolve has already been through that process, our evening service, and we can see the life and the energy that has come through some of their discerning and questioning and exploring of how they can do those large gatherings better. But as I said, it's not only just about large gatherings where community and discipleship happens, it also happens in smaller gatherings. Actually, you could argue it works best in smaller gatherings. And we're committed to creating spaces where these intentional faith and life conversations can happen. An interesting thing that came out of the mission planning process was this idea that when I talked about smaller faith conversations or gatherings, some people immediately went to thinking of our structured Bible study groups or home group structure that we have here at Turramurra and how we can strengthen that. And certainly that's part of what I'm talking about. But it's not only what I'm talking about, because for some people in the mission planning process, their understanding of these smaller intentional faith conversation groups were not necessarily gathering to read the Bible together, but other opportunities where we can get together to just support each other and talk about life and faith. For example, I've heard rumours, I haven't been to one of these gatherings yet, but I've heard rumours that there is a few people in our church who have been gathering for lunch every now and again for people who are recently retired or retrenched, just to help them navigate this transition in life together. Now, that's not a Bible study group, but I would say, is that a discipleship or a community or an intentional faith group? Yes, especially if they're talking about life and faith together. It's a good thing for them to be getting together and supporting each other in this way. Or another example could be, if you ever come along to our playgroup here, it is noisy and chaotic and it is wonderful. But it's very hard for the mothers to talk to each other just because there's so many kids and so many things that are happening. And some of the mothers have sort of said, wouldn't it be great if we could have another opportunity to get together just to talk? And so they're considering starting up a craft group. I put that in inverted commas because I think craft is just the excuse to get together. What they really want to do is to talk about life and how things are going and how they can support each other. And for some of them, they want to talk about faith as well. And so these are other intentional faith communities that smaller gatherings that I think come under this umbrella as well. And as a church, we want to strengthen all of this so that lots of people have an opportunity not only to gather in worship for their faith to be fed and their community to be deepened, but also for smaller groups. Now, there is a few people on our mission council who are very good at saying, we might have a dream, but how do we actually work out if this is happening? We need to set some goals to make this happen. And you'll see that in this document as well. You can go to the second last page, page number 3, and it's got a whole set of goals there. And one of the goals that relate to this is to say that we want to start up 12 groups like this, 12 intentional faith conversation small groups, whether they be more of the traditional Bible study groups or if they're more of these opportunities for people to get together to talk about life and faith. We want to start up 12 of them. Some people have asked, is that 12 additional or 12 total? Yeah, that didn't quite get defined, but we did say that we want 120 people connected into one of these groups by 2028. Now that's a goal that's worth trying to strive for, because we just think this is really important for people to get together in large and in small gatherings so that people's faith will be deepened and their sense of community and connection and the support and care and love and prayers they receive from that will be happening. And I guess as a church, we also want to make the most of our intergenerational gift that we have here. We've got people of every generation connected to this church. And there's something special about sharing faith and life, not only with people your own age, but people across the ages as well. And we're looking at how we can be encouraging more of that intergenerational sharing and community in the large and the small gatherings. And I guess that just reminds us of our long-standing DNA that we want to be empowering and strengthening and nurturing children, youth, young adults, right across the continuum from little kids right through to the young adults. We want to be providing those opportunities for their faith and their sense of connection to the church to be deepening and growing. The Mission Council set us some priorities on that, and we've actually been looking at 2 of those already. So our evening service evolved with the young adults, how we can take that to the next level. We've been working on that over the last 2 months, and they've done some really great work there. If you want to see what sort of things are coming out of that, we presented a paper to the Mission Council just last month of where Evolve Conversation is up to, of how to take it to the next level. I'll put that on our website and connect it to the comments as well. You can have a read through that. None of the stuff that we're doing here is hidden. You can read everything if you'd like. But that's really exciting what they've been working through. And the other one that we've been looking at is the Friday night ministry, and if that needs some reimagining. It's an interesting situation at the moment. For example, we've noticed that over the last 20 years, the sort of stuff that really used to work really well with high schoolers, you know, the high energy, crazy, chaotic youth group evenings. 10 years later was working really well with years 7 and 8s. And now that sort of a model works really well with people in years 4, 5 and 6. It's sort of like it's moved its way down. And so if you come to our Friday night groups now, Turramurra has got a heap of kids in this high energy youth group program. But that's sort of what we used to do in our Square One high school program. And over the last year, our high school program's been much more fragile, where we average about 20 kids at Turramurra. Our high schoolers have only been getting less than 5, which raises the question, what are they looking for now? How do we reimagine how to do Friday night for high schoolers for something which is helpful for them, that they want to come along and engage with? We have tried a few things. Like one of the things we tried is, instead of running, you know, the traditional youth group evening, we just got together around some food. Like I cooked some ribs at my place and said, come along and eat ribs and we'll have a conversation together around the table. And those sort of nights have been really well attended. And so now we're starting to wondering, well, maybe we have to reimagine our high school ministry on a Friday night. Or is it even a Friday night anymore? We still want them on the continuum. We still want to develop and nurture and grow them in their faith and their sense of connection and community. But how do we do that? So there's some of the questions that we're wrestling with there. I want to go on to talk about one of the things that I've got most out of the mission planning process, the thing that I've got most excited by during this process. And that was this idea that emerged of how we might develop a what's next culture. What's next culture? The idea of that is that in everything that we do, in every program, in every gathering, in every event, that we ask the question, what's next? What's next? What's the next step for somebody who is here on their faith journey? And how do we help them take that next step? And what's the next step on them feeling more connected or more integrated into our church community here? What's next? What's next? It's a very challenging idea. So we might say something like, you know, the parents who come along to the playgroup. You know, they're having a great time at playgroup, but what's next? What's next? It's one of the reasons why we're experimenting with the Sunday Fun Day, so it can be a what's next step for them. If they're enjoying playgroup, can we invite them to the Sunday Fun Day? But what's next from the Sunday Fun Day to continue that journey of faith and connection and community? I got challenged by this when somebody said, you know, you might have 800 people gathering for carols in the park, but what's next? How do you help them take another step on their faith journey or find another way of connecting them in to community? It's a really challenging idea. And it's not just for new people as well. It's for all people. So what's next for the people sitting in our worship services who might be here for the next, who have already been here for 30, 40, 50 years? What's their next step on their faith journey? What's their next step on their connection with the community? Or I could say, what's your next step? You know, even we've got our tree behind us here that reminds us that even a mature tree keeps growing. The Greek biblical idea of teleos is that, even in maturity, we keep growing. God constantly wants us to grow in our faith and deepen our sense of connection and community. So how do we do that? I'm really excited by this idea, and if we can create a culture of what's next, of always asking that question and looking at how we can provide pathways for those next steps. Yes, we might have to start a few new things so that we do have those next steps in place. But if we can build this into our culture, if we're constantly asking this, it has the power to be transformational. It can also help us to grow. And I need to talk about that for a moment. If you look at our goals, I just mentioned our goals briefly before, But the page 3 on this document, where it's got our goals, has got some really challenging ones in there. And if you've read through them already, you might have noticed goal number 1, which is huge. It says that we want to grow our average attendance by 10% per year, each year, moving forward. Like, that is huge as a goal. And it's not just a pie in the sky sort of goal either. When the Mission Council were thinking about how do we be the church that we feel that God needs us to be in the 2030s, we started to realise that the resources needed to do what we feel that God is calling us to do are quite significant. And people's ability to share resources at the moment, we lead such busy lives and there are so many demands on our resources that to do what we think we feel that God wants us to do in the 2030s, we sort of feel that we might need to double in size as a church to have the critical mass and the capacity to do that, both in terms of our volunteers, in our serving, in our impact in the world, but also financially as well. And if we're going to be doubling in size by the mid-2030s, we sort of did the mathematics back. And to do that, we need to grow by 10% per year, every year. So that's where that figure has come from. It's not just a pie in the sky, oh, let's just shoot for the stars. No, it's actually what we think we need to do to have the capacity to continue to be a strong and vibrant and growing and life-giving and fruitful church right throughout the 2030s. But it is a challenging goal. But it's not impossible. But we might have to think differently to achieve some of that. Let me go back to my house and use this as an example just for a moment to show you what I'm saying here. If we're trying to increase the number of people connected to the house, I think there's 3 groups of people that we need to be thinking about. And Evolve has actually been helpful in teaching me some of this sort of stuff. The first thing that we have to do is we need to acknowledge the people who are already in the house. Because if we're going to grow, we've got to make sure that the people in the house are also being, growing in their faith and feeling well supported and connected to community. Because if they're not and they leave, then our average numbers go down. And so it's really important to be looking after those already within the house. And so some of our goals are about that. Some of our dreams are about that. How do we continue to do discipleship and community well with the people who are already part of the community so that they'll continue to grow and feel connected and be part of the ministry and mission of Turramurra. But I also think another group of people we need to think about is these people who are just on the edge here. I don't know what to call them, whether they're fringe people or less regular people. I don't know what to call them. It's an interesting dynamic at the moment in our society that because we lead such busy lives, and there's absolutely no judgment here, we are finding that people are still connected to the church. They're just less regularly connected to the church. As I said, no judgment. It's just the life that we now lead. And so whereas maybe, 30 years ago, people would be coming to church every week or 3 out of 4 weeks, now it's more like 2 out of 4 weeks or even 1 out of 4 weeks. And that impacts the way that we see things. So if we look at the 9 a.m. worship here, 5 or 6 years ago, we were averaging, about 100, maybe a tad more per week. Now it's more like 80 or even 75. It's not that people have left the church in droves, it's just that people are not attending as regular, and that's what's made those numbers go down. And so maybe we need to be working with these groups of people and finding out, well, what is a helpful way of doing discipleship and community with you? You know, if it's harder to come to church on a Sunday morning, then is there some better ways of doing this? Or either the way that we do it on Sunday morning or in other ways. And for example, some people said, you know, the online offering that we do now is actually really helpful for this group. Because I can tell you that about 30 people every week watch our services later on like a streaming service. I've noticed it myself. People will start talking to me about my sermon on Sunday, and I'm going, but you weren't here. And then suddenly realise, oh, they've watched it. They've watched it since. And that's a really good thing for maintaining discipleship in this group that's just sitting on the edge. Being able to watch the service and engage with that is really good for their spiritual growth. It's not great for their sense of community. And it's an interesting question. How do we continue to link those people into community and make them feel loved and supported and cared for well? See some of the interesting questions we're struggling with? And actually that's part of what we're just about to do when we start looking at how we reimagine some of the ways that we do those large gatherings. We'll pick up some of those questions. But the third group of people are the people who are further out, the people who are not connected to the church. And yes, we have to do some work there too. Clearly, we've got to be still involved in evangelism, helping people who don't know Jesus to discover what we have discovered in Jesus and to share the good news that we have found of God's love and grace and guidance in our lives. Yes, that has to be part of it, and we need to be resourcing and empowering people to do that. But it's not just new Christians as well. This is one of the things Evolve has been teaching us. They've been looking at where they've been getting growth, and some of their growth has come from people who are looking for a church like ours. I've said that quite specifically. There are many, many great churches around us, especially in this upper North Shore. Really good churches that have got great critical mass and are doing great stuff for the kingdom, and I applaud them for doing that. But their approach doesn't necessarily fit with all people. And some people are looking for a church like ours, a church where you can ask any question and not feel judged or shut down. We are a place that is affirming of all people, and I want to encourage all people to be part of this community. We're a group who are constantly trying to navigate the complexities of life and faith together in a real way that is helpful for people. And there are some people around in other churches who are going, I'm looking for a church like yours. And so how do we make sure that we are presenting ourselves, whether that's online or in the community, as this is who we are, and if you are looking for a church like ours, then come and check us out. And that might mean us, doing some better work on our websites, or I don't know, if you Google Turramurra United Church, what do you get? I know that if you go on Instagram and do Turramurra United Church, you do get some stuff, but it's pretty old. And Evolve is teaching us that, this is important because this is how people find us and check us out, and this will help us to grow as well. So there's some of the things that we're wrestling with at the moment, and this idea that we want to grow so that we can continue to be a strong and vibrant and fruitful church into the 2030s. It actually leads us to the last point that I'm going to make, which is about sustainability. I need to change that. Cut there, come back, make sure that I found that. But it's not only people flowing into the church. We've got to make sure that we remember that we are a church that flows out as well. We are blessed to be a blessing, that we are driven by our desire to make a difference in the communities around us and in the world that we live. And so, a lot of what we do in the church is not only helping people flow in, but helping people also look out. We see ourselves as a lighthouse church, as a church that doesn't exist just for ourselves, but to help others. And that might be, through the work of supporting our missionaries, or the work that we do through Nimbong, or things like standing up for justice issues or social issues in our community, helping those in need through programs like the Dish or Parramatta Mission. It could be working in community groups ourselves and sharing our gifts and abilities out there so that we're blessing them. It could even be helping the other churches around us to continue to grow and to do the ministry and mission of God as well. It's not just about flowing in, it's also about flowing out. We want to be visibly engaged in justice, advocacy and mission every year. We want to give people the opportunity to make a difference. I said at the beginning there was 3 words that kept on coming up each time, many times in the mission planning process. And I've mentioned 2 of them already, discipleship, community. The third one that we want to talk about is sustainability. And I'm not just talking about putting solar panels on our roof so we're environmentally sustainable, even though we should talk about that because that's a very good idea. I'm actually talking about how we can continue to be sustainable as a church. Our growth strategy is to shape a church that is creative, efficient, and wise, able to do the ministry that matters, the ministry that we feel that God is calling us to do without exhausting those who serve. And that's been a really strong point coming through the mission planning process. We don't want to be a church that just tells people you've got to serve, and go, and give until you burn out. No. We want to still be doing this sort of work for the next 15, 20 years. We've got to make sure that people don't burn out. We've got to make sure that we're doing things in such a way that is life-giving, not life-draining, so that people find that joy to serve Christ well into the future. And that's a key part of why we're doing this growing generosity program, so that we can make sure that our church continues to be vibrant, growing, life-giving, innovative and sustainable right through the 2030s. And if you look at our goals, there are at least 4 of them that are directly related to that. Things like that we want to increase our volunteer leadership by 30 people over the next 3 years. Actually, if you want to go back to the 10% per year, we think we are going to increase that by 10% every year so that there is more capacity there so that people don't get burnt out. We've said that we want at least 100 hours of ministry, paid ministry staff working in our church moving forward. Once again, that should probably grow 10% per year as well. But that's that idea that we need to have some paid ministry staff to support the serving that people are doing. And we said we want to get the right people in the right paid positions to be most effective to the mission of God. And that's going to take a little bit of thinking through. What do we need moving forward? But we want to make sure that we don't lose our number of hours of ministry staff. We want to try and maintain that moving forward. We've also worked out that that will mean that over the next 3 years, our giving has to increase to around about, we think, $350,000, which is about a $50,000 or $60,000 increase on what we're currently giving, which is significant, but not impossible. When we did Imagining Hope 6 years ago, that was the increase that flowed out of that program. So it's not impossible, but it's a challenging goal. Yet, yes, we do want to leverage our property to be most effective as well, and that includes some income generation out of this property. But we still think our giving needs to go up. But we want to do it in such a way that we're not putting too much burdens on the people who are gathering. We want, as I said, this to be life-giving, not life-draining. A key part of the growing generosity is to be inviting all of us to consider how we invest in God's mission. I'm not a minister who does this comfortably. partly because I'm a beneficiary of people's generosity. Um, Part of what you give to the church helps pay my stipend so that I can do what I do here. But it's an important part of our discipleship, is to think about how we invest in God's ministry and mission. And the reason why we've called this program Growing Generosity is because we want to grow that culture of generosity in this place so that we can continue to be sustainable, not just now, but in the decades to come. So I'm just going to talk about that just for a few minutes. I understand that different people give in different ways, and I just want to highlight a few of those now. Once again, it's in both those documents that I've referred to as before. If we're talking financially giving to the church, the best and main way that people give to the church is through their regular offerings, their tithes and offerings. I know that the majority of people who do that through this church do it directly, straight from their bank account to the church's bank account. And that is so helpful for being able to set budgets and know that we will have the money to do what we need to do. And if you are a person who does that, we would invite you, as part of this program, to review that giving. We're not going to tell you what to do, that's between you and God, but we would ask you, we think it's a good part of our discipleship to yearly review our giving. Our circumstances might change, and so then we can think about what that is. For a person who doesn't regularly give, maybe you can consider what that might mean for you. If you want more information about it, if you go to our website, you will see a whole page there that has got all in the details of how to do that. Our bank account details, you can go to the website and it's all there. Some people also give through, special or directed giving. Like some people through our church support our missionaries, or the Nimbog school in India, who's helping students over in the northern part of India to learn and have education. Or other directed giving, like our Thanksgiving offering that we do every year. Some people have asked, are we doing that this year? Well, technically no, because we're doing Growing Generosity instead. But then people were worried that we were going to miss out on doing our Christmas blessing to our missionaries and supporting the Christmas programs that are always in the Thanksgiving offering. So technically, we are doing a mini Thanksgiving offering this year. All the details, once again, are on our website if you're interested. But a third way of giving is that some people support things beyond the church as well. And we want to encourage that. We think it's a good thing to be supporting other Christian organisations or other charities or community groups with our giving as well. We're called to share our blessings with others. We are blessed to be a blessing. And so we would encourage you, as part of this reviewing, to be thinking about that as well. The management team really wanted me to mention bequests. Partly because as a church we have been extraordinarily blessed by Alan Williams and his bequest to us. Alan certainly didn't give us all of his estate, he only gave us a sliver of his estate, but even that has been transformational. It's been running our youth program for the last 2 years. And so, when we're talking about how do we be sustainable, not just now, but in the years to come, maybe you might like to consider whether, look after your family first, we'd always encourage that, but whether or not there might be a sliver of your estate that you might be able to leave to the church to be transformational for the next generation that is to come. Once again, there's some information on the website about that too. But it's not just about financially giving. Another way of supporting or investing in the mission is with our serving. And this church has thrived because of its commitment and talented volunteers. And we encourage this strengthening of our volunteer base, this culture of serving, both within and beyond the church. Because it's when we find our part that we play in this mission, this vision that God has for our church comes to life. I know I've spoken a lot, and there is so much more. I get excited by this and I seem to say too many words. But I hope this has been helpful to update where we've been at. I also want to say that there is a part of this that is not finished yet. We're still on this journey. We're still on trying, discerning where God is leading us. I want to finish with two statements. There are two passion statements in the document, but I've actually put them on the back of this document because I think they sum up beautifully what we've been trying to do on the process so far and what we're hoping to do moving forward. So just as a way of finishing, as an encouragement, I want to read out these two passion statements. We are building a church that is being shaped for the 2030s, firm in foundation, flexible in design, and always under the Spirit-led construction. Looping back to that idea that Jesus is in the core of everything we do. This is not a one-time blueprint. This is a living, evolving strategy. What we begin today lays the groundwork for the church of tomorrow, a church that listens, adapts, includes and grows. We are not just building for ourselves, we are preparing a place where faith can flourish for generations to come. We will build a culture and capacity that can navigate a rapidly changing world while serving an unchanging God. Our capacity will not be measured just in numbers or programs, but in our ability to grow disciples, empower leaders, embrace innovation, and remain anchored in Christ. As the world shifts around us, we will listen deeply, adapt wisely, and stay faithful to the call of Jesus so that our church remains a light, a refuge, and a catalyst of hope into the next decade. Thanks for watching this. If you have any questions, you want to talk more about how you can be part of this mission, very happy to talk with you. My details and Kevin's details are on the screen. You can send us an email or give us a call anytime. I encourage you, as I said, to read through the two documents and to be a part of it. Join in our large and small gatherings as we continue to be there for you, to support you in your next step in your faith journey and your connection with the community, but also that you can be part of what God's calling you to be doing in helping bring this vision to life. Blessings and thank you for watching.